There are people who walk into a room and the air changes. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't hit the table, he didn't say anything at all, but conversations slow down for a second. People straighten up without noticing they did it, and somebody decides not to finish the joke he'd started. And there's the opposite. A man walks in, says hello, sits down, talks, and 2 minutes later, nobody remembers he arrived. He was there the whole time, and still nobody saw him. The difference between those two men isn't money, it isn't height, it isn't looks, or job title, or last name. And here's the part that ruins most advice on this subject. It cannot be faked. You can learn the posture, rehearse the lines, buy the suit, and people will still feel the seam. Carl Jung would tell you exactly why. And his explanation is far less comfortable than any tip about body language. Presence is not a technique. It's the radiation of what's actually happening inside you. Jung spent his career as a psychiatrist, and he noticed something strange. Patients credited him with knowledge he didn't have. They'd walk into his office already behaving as though the man in front of them could see straight through them. He called it projection. Every human being carries an ancient inner image of the wise one, the strong one, the one who knows, and hangs that image onto a living person standing in front of them. Jung even had a name for the kind of figure that attracts those projections most easily. He wrote about the mana personality, the individual who becomes a magnet for other people's images of power. Here's what matters about that. Presence is never generated alone. It happens in the space between two people. You don't carry it in your pocket. You create the conditions under which someone else hangs that image on you. Or doesn't. And there's exactly one condition. You can't contradict yourself. The projection won't stick to a man whose body says one thing while his face says another. The other person's mind catches the contradiction long before their conscious mind can name it. That's precisely why the guy who rehearsed his confidence doesn't get respect. He gets a vague, unplaceable distrust. So the first rule doesn't sound like posture advice, even though it starts there. The body can't lie for long. Collapsed shoulders, eyes on the floor, a voice that apologizes for taking up air. That isn't a habit, it's a symptom. The body announces what a man has decided about himself long before he opens his mouth. And here's the question Jung would ask instead of telling you to stand up straight. Why do you stand like that in the first place? What are you refusing to admit about yourself so completely that your body has been carrying it for years? But there's a trap here, and almost everyone falls in. Jung warned about what he called inflation, when a man doesn't integrate power, but wears it like a costume. Chest puffed out, heavy unblinking stare, deliberate hardness. That isn't presence. That's a persona inflated past what the inner reality can support, and it bursts under the first real pressure. Real presence always looks calmer than the imitation of it. In this video, I'll walk you through 7 rules, but I'll warn you now. At the end, there's one principle without which all 7 collapse into theater, and theater gets found out. Let's start with the simplest one, how you walk. Jung noticed something in his patients that any behavioral researcher would confirm today. The psyche gives itself away through movement, not through words, which a man controls, but through gait, through pauses, through the hand he doesn't know what to do with. Watch an insecure man cross a room, short, hurried steps, eyes hopping from face to face looking for approval. He goes around everybody, says "excuse me" twice, and crosses the space as if apologizing for occupying it. Now, the opposite. The step has weight and rhythm. The gaze goes where the man is going, not down at his feet. He doesn't dodge by reflex, he shares the path. Rule 2, walk like someone with a destination, but Jung wouldn't stop at gait mechanics. He'd ask where the apologetic manner comes from, and his answer would be specific. That man exiled his own aggression. Somewhere early he was taught that anger is bad, that firmness is rudeness, that wanting a lot is arrogant. And he complied. He sent all of it down to the basement and became agreeable. Except what gets exiled doesn't disappear. It goes into the shadow and runs him from behind. And it comes back out not as strength, but as the absence of it, in the rounded shoulders, in the apologetic tone, in the inability to take up space. That's why just stand up straight stops working after 10 minutes. You straighten your spine, and then your body drifts back into the shape your conviction assigns it. And here's the paradox Jung considered essential. Only a man who knows his own capacity for hardness can be genuinely gentle. His gentleness is a choice. For a man who amputated his aggression, gentleness isn't a choice. It's the only setting available. And people read that difference instantly without being able to explain it. A dog doesn't lunge at someone who isn't afraid. Humans are more complicated, but the principle holds. So start simple. Next time you cross a hallway, a lobby, a street, correct 3 things. The step, which should land with weight instead of sliding, the gaze, which should go where you're going, and the reflex to automatically get out of everyone's way. It seems minor, but the body teaches the psyche just as much as the psyche teaches the body. 2 weeks of walking like that changes how you enter any room, all of which collapses in 15 seconds if the man opens his mouth and makes the most common mistake in the world. Watch what happens when 4 people meet today. Within minutes, each one has explained what they do, roughly what they earn, what they're planning, and their opinion on everything. They've confused disclosure with connection. Rule 3, say less. And Jung would explain it differently than you've heard it. The point isn't that silence creates mystery. The point is where the need to explain comes from. A man who rushes to tell you everything about himself usually isn't sharing. He's defending. He's preempting a trial nobody has convened. And that trial isn't happening outside him. It's running inside his own head. There's a simple test for this, and it comes straight out of Jung's own laboratory. At a hospital outside Zurich, he would say a word and ask the patient to answer instantly with whatever came to mind. He timed it with a stopwatch. On most words, the answer came back immediately. But on certain ones, always specific to that person, something strange happened. The pause stretched. The patient stumbled, laughed for no reason, started explaining. That's how Jung found complexes, charged emotional knots that fire on their own. Now apply it to conversation. The subject you talk about too much, too fast, and in too much detail is not the subject that interests you. It's the place where it hurts. People sense this even without understanding it, which is why over-explaining doesn't earn respect. It earns a faint kind of pity. Silence doesn't work because it's mysterious. It works because a man with nothing to prove doesn't generate noise. And there's a purely practical edge to it. Silence applies pressure. In a negotiation, a hard conversation, a meeting, whoever can sit in the pause forces the other person to fill it. And whoever fills a pause out of discomfort almost always says more than they meant to. Listen more than you speak, and you'll leave any room knowing more than you entered with. The reverse is also true, and that's how most people live. But there's one situation where silence is precisely the mistake, a moment where saying nothing doesn't protect you. It teaches the world that you can be walked across. Rule 4 is about boundaries. There's a kind of person who never says no. He absorbs other people's work, other people's schedules, other people's rudeness, and smiles. He thinks of himself as generous, peaceful, mature. The world reads something else. The world reads that there's no cost here. And here's the brutal part. People don't exploit those they hate. They exploit whoever doesn't charge. Exploitation always flows to the point of least resistance, and it tests that point with small things before it tries the big ones. Whoever tolerates the small disrespect has announced that the large one will be tolerated too. Jung would add the part nobody says out loud. A man with no boundaries isn't kind. He's frightened. He's so afraid of conflict that he pays for peace with his own dignity. And all that unexpressed anger doesn't evaporate. It accumulates in the shadow. Then it comes back one of two ways, either as an explosion wildly out of proportion to the trigger, the kind he's ashamed of for a week, or as a quiet resentment that poisons the relationship from the inside until one day he leaves without ever explaining why. So a boundary isn't aggression. It's the thing that prevents aggression from stockpiling. A real boundary has 3 marks, and most people get all 3 wrong. First, it's said once, calmly, without a speech. A boundary explained in 5 paragraphs turns into a request for permission. Second, it isn't renegotiated every time. A boundary that shifts based on how hard the other person pushes isn't a boundary. It's a price, and everyone learns fast how many attempts it takes. Third, and the hardest, it has a consequence. Not a threat, a consequence. If the line gets crossed and nothing changes in your behavior, you've just taught everyone that the line was decoration. Notice, none of that requires volume. The man who shouts is demonstrating that he lost control of the situation and needs noise to compensate. The man with a firm boundary is usually the calmest person in the room because he isn't negotiating anything. Set few boundaries and defend all of them. 3 lines you never cross are worth more than 30 rules you renegotiate every week. And when those lines exist, something shifts around you that you never announced. People start calculating before they approach you, not out of fear, out of respect for the cost. Rule 5. Don't announce the direction of your next step. Here, Jung offers an explanation you won't find in any strategy book. He wrote about psychic energy, the idea that the tension between where you are and where you want to be is the fuel that moves you. Now watch what premature announcement does. You tell your friends the plan. They approve, they're impressed, they congratulate you. And you receive almost everything you were chasing in the first place. Recognition, attention, the feeling of mattering, the tension discharged, the fuel burned off in a conversation. That's why the people who talk most about their plans execute them least. It isn't superstition and it isn't other people's envy. It's that the psyche already collected the reward and no longer sees a reason to strain. There's a second, simpler reason. While an intention is still fragile, other people's opinions weigh far too much. One skeptical sentence from someone you respect can kill an idea that's 3 days old. Work in silence. Let the results show up finished. The noise of a completed thing is always louder than the noise of an announced intention. Rule 6 operates before you make a sound, and it's about how you present yourself. Jung borrowed a word from ancient theater, persona. The mask a Greek actor wore, so the audience would immediately know which character was speaking. And here's the first thing almost all modern advice gets wrong. The persona is not a defect. It's necessary. Nobody can function in society behaving identically in every context. You don't talk to a client the way you talk to your brother. That isn't fakeness, that's appropriateness. This rule has 2 enemies, one at each extreme. The first is total fusion with the mask. The man who became his job title, who doesn't know who he is outside the role, who loses the position and finds there's nobody underneath. Jung observed that these people tend to break around midlife, when the mask stops being enough and everything denied for decades comes back with interest. The second enemy is the opposite. Believing authenticity means total exposure, that showing everything you feel to anyone at any moment is proof of courage. It isn't. It's handing a complete map of your weaknesses to people you barely know. As for appearance itself, the principle is simple and has nothing to do with brands or price. Expensive clothes on an unkempt man still read as unkempt. 3 things carry the message: cleanliness, fit, and appropriateness to the occasion. But there's an effect that runs inward, and it matters more than the outward one. When you prepare before you leave, something changes in how you cross the threshold. That's not magic. You treated your own day as something that deserved preparation, and your psyche took the memo. Rule 7 is the root of all of them. Presence is the echo of what you think about yourself when nobody is watching. You can fix your posture, restrain your speech, set your boundaries, and dress with care. But if internally you repeat every day that you're not enough, that other people are better, that this room isn't yours, it leaks. It leaks through the half-second hesitation before you speak, through the laugh that runs slightly too long at a joke that wasn't funny, through the question you didn't ask because it seemed stupid. Jung would say, a man becomes what he accepts himself to be internally, and that no performance survives a contrary conviction for long. And now the principle I promised at the start. Without it, all 7 rules become theatre. Stop trying to impress people. Here's the actual mechanism in Jung's terms. The moment you try to impress someone, you hang a projection on them. You grant them the authority to judge you. Power they never actually had. You made them the judge and yourself the defendant, and both of you feel it instantly, though neither could explain it. That's why the most powerful person in a room is usually the one expending the least effort in it. He doesn't finish other people's sentences. He doesn't laugh before the joke lands. He doesn't agree automatically. He doesn't rush to fill the silence. When somebody performs for him and doesn't get the expected reaction, the whole room quietly reorganizes, and nobody had to say a word. Withdrawing that projection means taking back authority you've been giving away for free for years. Now look at what these 7 rules actually are: posture, gait, silence, boundaries, discretion, presentation, inner conviction. Not one of them depends on another person. Not one requires defeating anyone, deceiving anyone, or humiliating anyone. All of them happen inside you, and all of them keep working in an empty room. And that's not a figure of speech. For the last decades of his life, Jung spent his time at a tower he built with his own hands on the shore of a lake at Bollingen. He hauled the stone himself and added sections over many years. He lived there without electricity, chopped his own wood, cooked his own food. No audience, no students, no patients, nobody to impress. He said that was where he became what he actually was. Presence isn't the power to make people bow. It's the end of your need for them to, which is exactly why it works. Start today with the simplest version. Tomorrow, when you walk into somewhere, straighten your spine, move like someone with a destination, and don't be the first to fill the silence. That's it. Do it for 1 week and watch who starts treating you differently without being able to say why. If this landed for you, hit the like button. It helps these ideas reach the people who need them today. And leave a comment. Which of the 7 is hardest for you right now? Posture, gait, silence, boundaries, discretion, presentation, or inner conviction? If you want to keep going deeper into Jung's psychology applied to modern life, subscribe and turn on notifications. The world doesn't weigh you by what you say you're worth. It weighs you by what you demonstrate silently every single day.